You've been listening to a little sample of some songs from the man sitting next to me right now. This is Teki Latex. If you're not familiar, he is a rapper with the group TTC, who were on Big Data, and they had some fabulous albums on there, and then started a label called Institubes, which was huge in Paris in 2006, 7, 8, 9, and then went on to found Sound Pellegrino, which is currently putting out some extremely forward-thinking club music. Teki is sort of the unofficial mayor of Paris. If you walk around with him, you realize that he knows everybody, and also very good at the restaurant recommendations in case anybody needs any. So join me in welcoming Teki Latex. Yeah, go
Thank
for
you. Thank you for this introduction.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So today we thought we would come and play some of Teki's favorite songs and talk a bit about Parisian club music and
some of my favorite French songs.
Some of your favorite French songs. And talk a bit about French music and where he comes from, and then we'll lead into more about the history of TTC and Sound Pellegrino and Institubes and all those great things. So yeah, why don't you start?
Yeah, so just to begin with, thank you for having me. And of course, this is a little bit of a weird circumstance, but I'm really happy to be able to think about other things and do this this afternoon, and instead of refreshing my Twitter feed and for information about what's going on in Paris right now. But yeah, so I'm gonna play some songs. You just have to keep in mind that I have some very cheesy tastes sometimes, so I'm not here to like lecture anyone on the greatness of French electronic music. It's always going to be my point of view, and it's just going to be what I like. And sometimes it's going to be a little bit cheesy. Sometimes it's going to be a little bit weird. It's not representative of all French music, of course, and of all French electronic music, of course. And plus, we had to make a selection because we can't play everything. So I'm gonna start with what are my first memories of hearing electronic music, I would say, and it goes through. When I was a child, I was watching a lot of television. I was sitting in front of TV all day. My mom was working in a hospital, and she was not at home most of the time. And I was just hanging at my grandparents' house and watching TV all day. And I watched a lot of TV shows, and one of them was a Japanese TV show that in France was called XOR. And you will hear, I'm going to play the opening theme, and you'll hear why. I think for me it's very representative of why disco is so embedded in French people's roots, because it's all of the TV themes at that time were very, very disco influenced. So
what
for
time
me, like,
would this have been?
This is like 1983, I think, or 1984, something like that. So yeah. The opening theme for XOR. Yeah, so basically it's basically a Marauder song for kids, you know. And so this is what we all grew up on, and so like this is our first experiences of. For people from my generation, it was their first experiences of electronic music and of synth-based pop music in a way. Another one of these early things is this song by Jacno called Rectangle. So Jacno used to be in a punk group, and then he decided that he was going to make pop music with synth, and he was really like. He was an important figure in the underground in France. I mean, you know, I was obviously too young to be aware of that, but retrospectively, he died 10 years ago, a little bit less than that. And before he died, I was cross-interviewed with him, and so what I get from learning about him and talking with him is that he was really He was part of the Stinky Toys, which was a big French a punk group in the late 70s, early 80s. And then at the beginning of the 80s, he started making electronic music. And it was a very new thing. And it was a very unexpected thing from him. And he wasn't afraid to cross over to the mainstream. And he wasn't afraid to let, advertising agencies and products license his music to turn it into advertisements. So I came in contact with this song by watching an ad for Nesquik, the chocolate morning drink, chocolate milk drink, chocolate powder that you put in milk. Anyway, there was a big character called Gros Quick, and it was like watching it was like a TV cartoon, except it was an advertisement, and the music was this weird little and very melancholic and actually very sad little number. So that was Rectangle by Jacno. Maybe should I play a little Jean-Michel Jarre song?
Yeah, can you talk about the importance of Jean-Michel Jarre?
So
for you French people,
it's very highly debatable, his importance. There's a lot of people who hate Jean-Michel Jarre. He's seen as a very cheesy character, but he's also a very important artist, I think, for French electronic music. But he had a tendency to blow things out of proportion. He basically invented EDM. He made like big concerts under the Eiffel Tower with enormous like light shows and synths, and basically triggering the fireworks and stuff like that. So, for a lot of people, he's just like a symbol of something you have to hate when you make electronic music in France. But he when you dig a little bit deeper and listen to his first albums, there's some stuff that's really crazy groovy and awesome and a little bit experimental, but at the same time not trying that too hard. And basically he's trying to make pop music, but the thing that comes out is songs like Zoolook, which experiments with like vocals and African rhythms and in a bit of a weird way, in a bit of an awkward way, but the result is actually really good. So here's Zoolook by Jean-Michel Jarre. I love this song. Zoolook by Jean-Michel Jarre.
So we were talking, I was asking him, because he was saying that, you were saying that you thought that was a melancholy song, and I read that as a really happy song.
Well, but that's what's great about melancholy. It's emotions clashing, and it can be happy and at the same time a little bit nostalgic and a little bit sad at this. Actually, like those two things at the same time. That's very specific of French music, I think, of that era.
So when
music of that era in general, like a lot of 80s stuff is like that for me.
Was Jean-Michel Jarre something that was around you all the time when you were growing up, or was it something that you came to later?
Once a year when the fireworks were on. But it was around, he was he was around, definitely. But this wasn't the music that was really like in the charts. The music that was in the charts was that. So Voyage, Voyage by Desireless. That's her name. She had like a crazy like futuristic haircut. Like she had like her hair was kind of like an upside down triangle. And for us, like for a kid like me, I was probably 6 when this came out. I was like, whoa. Like she was very androgynous, and I was like, whoa, like this really felt like a cartoon character coming to life and singing this really like beautiful song. And it was French New Wave. in a way, or a poppy version of French New Wave, and sort of going into French Italo as well.
I guess when you hear stuff like this, you can kind of hear the roots of where something like Daft Punk or the French Touch Volume 1 got some ideas from.
And Electroclash, very much. So yeah, that's the big new wave influence on France. I don't know where it came from. I don't know the story behind it, because there was just a 6-year-old kid watching TV when this came out. But, in a way, there was that, and there was Depeche Mode on the same program, and it just made sense.
Would you say that you're still influenced by the aesthetic of that time, the cartoon time and the 80s new wave?
Yeah, I am, because that's my idea of pop as a culture. Definitely. So, yeah, another song that was really big at the same time, and I think I love this song, so I have to play it. It's Image, les démons de minuit. I love it. It's dark, but it's mysterious, and it's happy at the same time. It's super funky, and
you haven't lived until you've seen the French team do this in karaoke.
All right. So yeah, Image, les démons de minuit. What's also important, I think, about this song is that it's one of the early traces of black music at the top of the charts in France. Boogie and funk and black dance music. There wasn't a lot of that in the French variété panorama at this time. And the singer for Image was black and is still black. And he's from Antilles, and that was a big thing to have a black French singer on television in the 80s.
You mentioned French variété. Can you explain what that is?
French variety, French, 80s French chanson in a way. That's not, I guess, acoustic, and that's not Georges Brassens, who was just sitting there with a acoustic guitar and singing his French chanson. Well, French variety, I guess French variety would be like the modernized version of that for the 80s. That's a term that would just replace pop for French singers, I guess.
So when you were growing up as a kid, synth sounds were all around you then?
Yeah, exactly. On TV shows, on the top 50, which is we didn't have the top 40, we had 10 more. I don't know why. The top 50, that was a big thing, and yeah, we were just very influenced by that. Before I started researching my own music, and when I was just a kid. Yeah, what's next?
And that song is called "The Demons of Midnight." What is she actually saying in that song?
It has a lot to do with the clubs being an evil, a place of debauchery, and the video is amazing because they turn into vampires. It's sort of like there's a priest that is tempted by a woman in heels, and it's just like. It's exactly. It has a lot to do with the French hedonism and the sort of mystique that was surrounding club culture and dance culture at the time, which made me want to go to clubs initially. And it's the video is very weird and dark, and something that would sound probably like. Kind of weird on television right now, but very romantic also.
I sense a theme brewing.
Yeah. I know. I know you want to explore that French romance theme.
Oh la la.
The next song is by Lerita Mitsuko. They were big. They were actually the most credible of the songs that I played so far. So they were like real awesome musicians and very alternative, and they carried with them a tradition of alternative music in France. And at the same time, they were super big, and they were on TV everywhere. But at the same time, I don't know, they really represent something important for France, and they were influenced by music from all over the world. And this song is called Marcia Baila. It's a song about choreographer who was close to the group who died from cancer. So it's a song that deals also with cancer and that deals with serious subjects in a festive manner. Again, a very French thing. So it's a beautiful and very festive song, but at the same time, it deals with death and cancer, and it's so hard. When I hear it now, I'm like, how was this on the top of the charts in the 80s? And it's crazy that we could get away with that back then. It's stuff that I don't think we could get away with that right now. I mean, pronouncing those words, and it's very tough.
You were saying that this is like music that people would play at weddings. These are all like pop
Absolutely.
hits.
Absolutely.
I think this is a lot more avant-garde than what they play at American weddings.
Oh, yeah.
Where are we going from here?
I think we should play a Mory Kanté song. He lived in Mali. I think he's from Guinea, if I'm not mistaken. He has lived in many African countries before settling in France for a little while. And when he was in France, he made some world music song. World music was the name they would give to popified or like westernified African music back in the 80s. So this song was huge in France. And I think it's a part of the French pop history. It's called Yeke Yeke by Mory Kanté. So, as I was telling Vivian, I was a little too young to know what was going on back then. But as far as like racial issues in France, but immigration was already a big topic of course, in the 80s, and there was Touche pas mon pote, which was a big political association that was like dealing with such subjects, and but at the same time helmed by one of the French parties. So it was, I don't know. I was just a kid who saw these things on TV without really understanding what was going on. But there was a strong African community in Paris, and it was sort of intertwining with French culture and French music, obviously.
Well, we were talking the other day about how much African regional music from all these different countries like Ivory Coast and the Antilles, etc., is like influencing club music and pop music to this day in Paris. Like you were mentioning Coupé-Decalé.
Yeah, we're gonna play some of that.
We're gonna get there.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, it's this is our. It's not as strong as it is, say, in the UK, where Jamaican music has really given birth to a lot of a whole history of UK underground music. In France, and I think we're going to develop that subject later, but France is a little bit too attached to its cultural and literary roots sometimes, which refrains it from totally embracing music that channels the body and dance music completely, But yeah, we're going to talk about that later, I think. So French rap, yeah. There's so much French rap. So I didn't know where to start, and I don't want to play the obvious stuff. So you have your. It starts with basically NTM, IAM, and MC Solar. NTM are from the French suburbs, and they're really hardcore, and they started as a graffiti crew, and they talk about being against the system and being against the police, and they're, you know, like they're a lot of French punk people and alternative people are seeing some sort of continuation of the punk spirit in them, and so they're embracing them. But obviously the mainstream is not embracing them because they're so hardcore. And at the same time, they refuse to be called punk because they want to be liked for what they do, and which is rap. Then you have IAM, who have a slightly more nuanced approach, and who are still street and still talking about issues and still talking about their African roots, but they're also bringing a lot of humor in it. And so I really liked IAM when I was a kid, despite being from Paris and them being from Marseille, and there was like always, just like football, you know, like always a sort of a rivalry. But I really liked them. But then again, I think their music, I don't know if their music really, especially their early music, have stood the test of time. And then you have MC Solar, who was, who was black. You know, like both IAM and NTM were multiracial, and MC Solar was a black kid who had a very literary approach to his music and a very intellectual approach to his music. You know, a lot of French people liked him because he was a poet as opposed to an angry rapper. You know, he would rap over jazzy beats and be very De La Soul and Tribe Called Quest influenced, and sort of like the French equivalent to that crew, the native tongue, and to that movement. And so he made Jazzmatazz, and he made that song with Guru from Gangstar that was a little bit famous out of France. And for a lot of foreigners, MC Solar was the first French rapper they came across. And he was good, but he was very cheesy. You know, it was very simple. You know, it was like for true rap heads, and I was sort of becoming one of them at the time. He was like, that was rap for the mainstream, you know. And but at the same time, at some point, he put a lot of really good rappers on the map, and some pretty hardcore ones as well. And some of them were a group called Démoocrates D. And Démoocrates D were a pro-black, super hardcore group, like early horrorcore, you know, like early, like talking about serial killers and stuff. That song that I'm gonna play is called Le Crime, which means crime, and it makes a lot of references to Clockwork Orange and serial killers, and the lyrics are quite simple, but the music is wonderful. And it's produced by Jimmy J, who made all of MC Solar's beats. Well, he made half of MC Solar's beats, the other half being produced by Cassius, the guys behind Cassius. So yeah, Le Crime by Démoocrates D, produced by Jimmy J. Should just say what I just said?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're literally saying, I am making a reference to Orange Mécanique by Stanley Kubrick in this song, in the lyrics of this song. So that's in general, that's my little problem with French rap, is that they're being very scholar about it. Like they're over explaining things all the time. You know, like MC Solar would make a reference to a French poem with a twist at the end, and he would reveal the twist in his lyrics. I'm like, come on, man, no spoilers. You know, like Le Dormeur du Val. Le Dormeur du Val isn't sleeping; he's dead. I'm like, yeah, that's like you're not supposed to. You know, like, okay, it's okay. You read it, great. You know, but like, don't. it doesn't make you an intelligent rapper if you quote French poems, you know?
So they're actually trying to prove that they were intellectual.
There's a little bit of that. It's still a great song, and I love this song, and I still respect the hell out of these guys. But my only problem with it is that they're being a little bit on the nose. Is that it? They put it under your nose, like, a little bit literal, like. But yeah, they're a little bit like too. It's too much, you know, like pushing it on you, like a little too much.
You mentioned when you started talking about French rap about the suburbs or the banlieue. Can you explain a little bit about?
Yeah, it's not the same thing as in the States, and in some countries. The poor areas in France are actually in the suburbs, and the inner cities are. It's more expensive to live there, and it's richer areas, and the richer people live there. So basically, the suburbs were built after the war to put all the immigrants there to help rebuild France, and you know, they were parked in projects, and obviously a lot of conflict came out of that. And because these are like the cité HLM, the HLM being habitation à loyer modéré, like a cheaper
government housing.
Yeah, government housing and the project housing, and so these places, even in the suburbs, there'll be a small city, and then maybe like 10 minutes from the center of that city, there will be the housing projects. So they're very like isolated, and you know, there's obviously tensions that come out of that, and that's where a lot of French rappers came from, and yeah, that's where in 1995, which is when that song came out, this was a big topic of in French politics, and of course, yeah, it's part of our life forever. That les banlieues, and there's been like La Haine is one of the movies that depicts that kind of tension. Some of you might have seen La Haine, French movie that came out around that time.
So what actually got you into rap in the first place?
I'm not at all from the suburbs. I'm a little bourgeois kid from Paris. And
what district are you repping?
From the 15th. And I just, you know, I got into rap, I don't know, I guess accidentally. And I just liked I loved so many things about it, and it was so important for me, and it was so new for me, and so, you know, I didn't relate to the rock stuff for some reason. I was, you know, there was rap in the Ninja Turtles, and there was, you know, like there was, and you know, like De La Soul had colorful outfits, and everyone was a different sort of superhero, and I just know I just liked that, and there was like more to it than just someone singing a song. There was a context behind it, and there was, you know, there was more to analyze about it and more to think about, I guess, and that's what I liked about it.
Cool.
Yeah, we'll talk about why French rap blew up a little bit later. Okay, so this song is a little bit of a gem for me. It wasn't very popular at the time. It never blew up so much, and it's really weird, and it totally takes a different approach from what MC Solar and most French rappers were doing at the time. You know, there was like I said before, there was a really heavy, like, literary background in when it came to rap in France. You know, like, you had to be referencing poets in order to be credible and in order to reach the mainstream and stuff. And these guys had a totally different approach. So this is a song by Sté. It's called Tacteel, and it's not. There's a lot of English. You'll hear a lot of English words in it because it's not actually in French. It's actually in what they call veule, which is a slang from a city called Vitry in the French suburbs. And they had their own slang and they had their own language. And it was really, really awesome to discover that through this song. So it's Ste and some people from her group, Mafia Underground. I think it's probably from 95, 96, that song. And Veule is a mixture of French, English, and Verlan, but a kind of different kind of Verlan that's very specific to Vitry. And Verlan is when you invert the syllables in a word, which is a thing that's very usual in French slang. So basically, I still don't understand a lot of what's being said in that song, but it was just so awesome, and it was very cryptic and very exciting, and it was a little hit in the underground, but like there's a lot of it never really crossed over that song, but it's very important for people who really like French rap, because it didn't rely on the tradition of French literature. It was just like a totally different monster. Like a totally different thing, like something you couldn't, it was its own thing. It was, I had the feeling of liking rap for what it was and not for like a modern version of poetry, or a hipper version of rock or whatever, it was just like, you had to be born at that time and to be living this to understand that track. Tacteel by Ste and Mafia Underground. So yeah, black female rapper, rapping over a track with sirens, where in France everyone was influenced by New York, but everyone hated on the Californian stuff. And I was really into G-Funk, and I didn't felt represented by French rap at the time. And, to put things in context, I was listening to a lot of American rap at the time, and I sort of didn't really feel a lot of French rap. And these guys came out with their own language, with their own kind of slang. And it felt so different from the rest of French. The name of the track is Tacteel. Chelou is the Veule version of Chelou. And Chelou, Chelou is the Verlan of louche. And louche means weird, so it means weird track. And but it was just like very cryptid and new and weird, and it felt like if you knew the secrets of this track, you were really special. So I loved it. Of course, I have to say one thing before we go further. I talked about my taste in music being very cheesy and weird. It's mostly different from other people. I don't know why I always had that. If you consider, for example, Street Fighter characters, everyone's gonna pick Ken or Ryu. Some people are gonna pick Chun-Li, but they're the most like balanced characters. And I'm a Blanca guy, so
Respect.
I'm just attracted by stuff that's a little bit more out there, and so yeah.
Did going to rap shows take you all around Paris? Like that's kind of what happens in New York, where if you get into rap shows, then all of a sudden you're going to the Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, everywhere. Was it like that here?
Yeah, but it was mostly inside of Paris. And, I think I started going to rap shows a little bit after that. Like I would listen to that on French underground radio stations, which was a thing at the time. It's not really anymore, but I mean, it changed. It goes through the internet now. But it was just, I was in high school, so I wasn't going out much. I started going to like open mics and stuff like that a little bit later on, when I started actually making rap and being a rapper. I am now a retired rapper, but I was in a group for 10 years. And we're going to speak about that a little bit later on. But there wasn't a lot of rap shows, to be honest. Like Ice Cube and maybe Warren G would come to France every once in a while, and Das FX and the Fugees, but there was like not a lot of rap concerts because there was a lot of trouble when there was rap concerts, and there was there was always some. There's a big history of riots at French rap concerts. I'm not a rap journalist, but if you have the opportunity to talk to one or to read about it at some point, there was legendary showcases that turned into big riots that they would talk about on the news on the next day that happened in France at the time. Especially a concert by X-Men, which was a French group, and I'm gonna play a song a little bit later on. Right now, actually. So yeah, this is the X-Men. They were my favorite rap group for a while because they really had like a laid back, but at the same time very technical style, and they were very they were very confident in their raps and using I was really into flows in rap as opposed to being lyrically lyrical. I was more into how you play with words and how you play with the rhythm of words rather than the message. And these guys, while still having a very strong message, they were super technical in their flow, and not in a demonstrative way, but rather in a very natural way and a very laid back way. So they're awesome. And when they played in Paris for the first time at basically in a record store, they created a big riot, and there was like a lot of trouble, and it was on TV on the next day, and I was heading there, and I saw like people like running all over the street and robbing stuff from the record store, and which was a Fnac, which is a kind of it was also selling hardware, so when it turned into a riot, a lot of people just stole a bunch of shit and ran away with it. So yeah, that was a interesting thing. X-Men, j'attaque du mic. So this wasn't on the radio, and French rap was popular back then, but basically only NTM, IAM, and MC Solar were really like selling a lot of records and being on the radio. And then all of a sudden, there was a law in France that said every radio had to play I think a certain percentage of French music. I think like 60% or something. Like basically, all of a sudden, you had to play a majority of music with French lyrics in France. And so everyone was like, every radio was like, what are we gonna play? French rock wasn't that popular. The French rock that was popular was basically sung in English. All the French chanson and the French variété was just appealing to like older people, and it was Johnny Hallyday, who's a very cheesy French singer, who it was that kind of stuff that existed as far as like French chanson goes, and that didn't appeal to the kids. So there was a radio station called Skyrock that was just playing a bunch of pop music. Mostly from the States and or in English at least, and all of a sudden they had to change their whole programming to switch it to the French thing, and so they kind of their approach to it was like we're gonna turn into a rap radio. We're gonna play all rap so that we can play like more French stuff that is gonna appeal to French kids, and we're gonna make French rap blow up. And that's exactly what happened. And one of the first songs they played was Viens voir le docteur by Doc Gynéco, which is he's called the gynecologist, Doc Gynéco. So he was part of a group called Ministère Amer, which was very hardcore and very like politicized. And he was and Ministère Amer were like, they were like a riot group, but and Gynéco's role in Mystère Amer was a little bit more passive. He was in the crew, but he wouldn't rap that much.
He was busy being a doctor.
and then all of a sudden he's like, okay, I'm gonna launch my solo career, and I'm gonna make some really sweet songs for the radio with super hardcore lyrics put in them, you know. And so all of a sudden this guy blows up with the help of Skyrock becoming a rap radio, and it was already like a very well established radio. So all of a sudden French rap sells a lot, and these guys are becoming really rich, and it becomes easy to be on French radio when you're a French rapper, and the pervert thing about it is that people are starting to make music with Skyrock in mind, and so a lot of French rap also became stereotyped and very formatted to be on Skyrock.
What years are we talking about
96,
here?
97. That's when I graduated. So Viens voir le docteur by Doc Gynéco, which is also, interestingly, a very Californian sounding track, and so it speaks to my heart, because I was a big G-Funk fan at the time. So this song could not exist in especially in the US in 2015. He talks about seducing a 15-year-old girl, and he's telling her, come to the doctor and stuff like that. You know, so it's very super awkward. And it was trust me, it was a big hit, and we all loved it to death. And it was so huge, like Doc Gynéco was everywhere. His album is considered a classic. There's songs about, he touches upon like really, specific subjects, and he talks about suicide. He talks about it was heralded as one of the greatest French albums of all time, French rap albums and he was called the rap Gainsbourg in a way. So a very controversial character. Yeah. So this was big, and what else can we play? I just want to play a couple of songs by 113. We talked about French rap that had its own identity, and that didn't need to reference French literature or pre-existing stuff to exist. There was, Tacteel by Ste still references US rap, but there was not a lot of French rap that was just French sounding in the way that it didn't copy US rap, and it didn't need to look at what happened before in rap to be its own thing. So one of the rare people making that was 113. That was a group also from Vitry, and their particularity is that they were very interested in electronic music. They were super hood and super talking about, this song is about robbing a bank, and it's very detailed, and what they're gonna do to the owner of the bank, and what they're gonna do to his family, and it's very hardcore, and but at the same time the beat is super disco, and it's the guys behind 113, the guys who are making beats for 113, there was a lot of different people, and this song is by this producer called Pone, which is not to be confused with DJ Pone. It's two different Pones, but Pone was from La Funky Family, Marseille group, but there was also a very important member of the crew behind 113 was DJ Mehdi, who a little bit later on sort of became a part of the French electronic music world, and released a lot of great house songs, and was close to the entourage of Ed Banger and Daft Punk, and who is now deceased. who was a very important person in the French electronic world. I'll play a little bit of a song produced by Mehdi, but this one is not produced by Mehdi. But it's super disco and super like it feels like rappers saying really hardcore things over an ABBA beat. Beautiful song. And I'll play another one by 113 produced by Mehdi, which samples Planet Rock. So the link with electronic music is even more obvious there. And that was a thing for a minute in French rap, that sort of crossover between filtered house and French rap. So it's a very unique French thing. So it's a thing we're very proud of. So you have to keep in mind that these guys are not like hipster rappers at all. These are like the most hood of the hood rappers in France at that time, which is 1998. And you know, like they're no joke. Like this is not like you know, like
club raps,
white kids making club rap. This is just like the hoodest rap over some clubby beats and electronic music influenced stuff. You know,
were already the rappers in the house clubs at this time. Is that where it came from, or?
Well, I think Daft Punk was a thing that all the rappers respected because there was a huge influence of 80s funk, like you know, like Imagination and that kind of stuff. That was a big thing in the French projects. You know, like US. Boogie was a big thing in the French projects, so it was a part of the drug dealer aesthetic to wear tight clothes and listen to rarty music, which is, you know, like funk, basically 80s funk, disco-y funk that they were playing in clubs at the time, and you know, like be like, you know, like sort of a Travolta style. You know, like there was a sort of a Travolta meets Scarface aesthetic in the French project amongst the older brothers, and then that sort of crossed over with some of the younger people who were making rap at the time. Transpired on the rap thing. So yeah, everyone loved Daft Punk mainly because of this song. I wanted to make a very dramatic effect. Mainly because of this song! So filtered funky music and of course vocoder and sort of a breakdance vibe that helped a lot crossing over with the rap audience. And I remember just being a rap kid at the time, but everyone was like, yeah, fuck this electronic music shit except Daft Punk.
And what was it like for you when Daft Punk was coming out here in Paris?
First of all, it was confusing because they had punk in their name and it didn't sound like punk. So it was like, what is this, you know? And the narrative was very much, these guys blew up in England and outside of France before they blew up in France. That was like, look, you know, like we have some real talent in France and we're not even able to see it. It has to blow up in other countries before it blows up here. You know, like, it's a disgrace. And then it eventually blew up in France massively.
And was it a source of... I mean, I feel like this was the first electronic music that many people came to that they identified as French. Like, if you didn't catch the disco thing from the 70s and 80s, then this was the first time a lot of people in our generation were like, oh, Paris, France.
Yeah, the disco thing was in our veins since the TV shows of the 80s and since growing up on Italo, because I have to say Italo was also like omnipresent in France at the time. It was just we were, you know, like we had been ready for it for a while, and then it just happened, and it was like it easily crossed over with the rap thing, and it was at the same time it was house music, but with a French point of view on it, and it was something we could relate to, and we were really proud of having people who were exporting their sound and who didn't have to have French lyrics to do it. So that was a big thing.
Now, were you already going to clubs at this point, or were you still like just
sort of,
rap only?
Sort of starting to go to clubs. But what happened is that I started going to like rap clubs and hip hop parties, and then very soon I got into like indie hip hop, and so I would go to like indie rap shows, and then indie rap became started crossing over with IDM and Warp and people like Prefuse 73 and Chocolate Industries, Scam, and all these like underground IDM labels, and they would play at the same shows and the same venues, and that's how I got. And also like TTC, which is my rap group at the time, signed to a English label called Big Data, which was a sub-label of Ninja Tune. So I was getting exposed to a lot of music from Ninja Tune and getting a lot of getting in touch with electronic music more in depth through that. And then in reaction to that, I started getting into club music and more like club-centric music and 4/4, like 4 to the floor stuff via Electroclash. But I feel like maybe we should maybe play one more like French Touch era song before we get into that whole genealogy. I have to pick the right one. Maybe one that's a little bit less known. So there was like Filtered House was big, but there was also a fringe of a branch of French Touch, which was a bit more nervous and a bit more a bit harder. And there was what Thomas Bangalter from Daft Punk was doing as a solo artist sounded very nervous and very cut up and like a weirder version of Chicago house. Chicago was always a big influence on French house, and so this is Spinal Scratch. I'm just gonna play like small bits of a couple of songs. So Spinal Scratch by Thomas Bangalter, which is half of Daft Punk, and you'll see it doesn't sound like your typical happy, groovy Daft Punk song. So very, very chopped up and very nervous style. And the kings of that style were Jess and Crab, who are amazing producers, who are still making music and especially releasing music and playing shows, playing DJ sets in Paris. What's in the back? So yeah, Jess and Crab, they have a label called Berserk now, and they're still like digging for new artists. And back in the day, they found out about Daft Punk, and nowadays they find out about like amazing Kuduro and release it on their label. And they still have an ear to the underground, and they'll release people from Gang Fatale and people from they'll go all the way and learn Portuguese to be able to communicate with people in Lisbon and put out the first records by people like Nigga Fox and who are now on Principe. Like these guys, they found out about these guys before and they're really like great people. And at that time they were making a sort of a more thugged out version of French house. And this is them chopping up a Billy Ocean sample. The track is called In Your Ear by Jess and Crab. Jess and Crab.
So we were talking about, I mean, that sounds a lot like you can definitely hear the echoes of that in Surkin and Bob Mo and some of the other guys.
Yeah, a lot of Institubes kids were very, very influenced by Jess and Crab. So Jess and Crab were part of like the first generation of French Touch, but they have influenced the second one a lot. Rather than the second generation didn't really wasn't really influenced by the filtered house, sort of like wavy, more like laid back filtered house. They were more into the nervous, almost rock stuff. So basically, like Justin Crab were a big influence for them. I was mentioning that Justin Crab were still active and that they have a label and that they release amazing music. They have an ear to the street, and were particularly interested in this style of music that happened, I would say, a few years ago, 5 years ago, in France, called Logobi, which is sort of an evolution of Coupé-Decalé, which is music from Ivory Coast. So dance music from Ivory Coast. When that dance music from Ivory Coast came to France and started fusing with the tectonic stuff and the electro house stuff, and the tempo started getting a little bit faster, and it gave birth to Logobi. And that's stuff that's basically only on YouTube and that kids dance to in the halls of their projects. Justin Crab took one of those songs and released it on their label Berserk. This is Instru Coupé-Decalé by Zaza Twins, and it's amazing. So this is from 2010, and there's a dance that goes with it.
You want to show it?
No, I can't. I'll make a fool of myself. But the dance is in between the tectonic stuff and the Coupé-Decalé stuff. It's really, really good.
Hey, Teki, what's tectonic?
Tectonic is like electro dance. It was very popular in 2008, I guess. It's the closest thing we have to a local sort of dance movement. You know, it's not as cool as footwork, or like like local dances from Baltimore and Jersey and stuff like that. But it was our own thing. It's a very white lower class aesthetic of people. These kids, like, they had like haircuts with a lot of how do you say, like
gel?
Yeah, a lot of gel. They had like crazy spiky haircuts and sort of like very slim outfits, and a little bit gothic with a little bit of fluorescent pink thrown in the mix, and they would pause on pictures like this, and the dance is basically like this, and it's inspired by voguing a little bit, but also by hip hop dance and by house dancing, and it was a big dance craze on YouTube for like 2 years, and then the main French TV channel TF1 sort of co-opted them and put them like in every cheesy television show, and then it was over.
They killed tectonic.
You're
kind of underselling it, because it actually was pretty cool.
It was cool. It was a little bit cool, but it was cool. It was very unique, and I admired the sort of insular aspects of it, and the fact that it was born in the French suburbs, and it was a really like grassroots movement, and it looked like nothing else that happened anywhere else in the world. It was a very, very, very French thing, and it was very interesting. But at the same time, it was a little bit, it was a fad in a way. But there's like plenty of things like this all over the world happening all the time. Tectonic. It gave birth to beautiful things like Logo B, and it had its purpose, and now it's over, and we don't have to dwell on it. Anyway,
we haven't heard any of your music.
That'll come a little bit later. I want to talk about Electroclash first.
All right.
So this is Miss Kittin and the Hacker, who were the flagship group for Electroclash, which is basically which was a worldwide phenomenon of new wave and Italo-inspired dance music that had a little bit of a gothic aspect to it as well, and that was like basically Depeche Mode on steroids for Berlin kids in the early 2000s. No?
Fair enough. And New York kids.
And New York kids, of course. Shout out to Larry T. This is Stock Exchange by Miss Kittin and the Hacker, who come from Grenoble. So a lot of New Order, a little bit of Drexciya, and a little bit of French flair, and voila! So that's how I got into club music, really, like through the Electroclash thing. There was that, and it crossed over with the techno thing a little bit because Vitalik and a lot of stuff coming out on DJ Hell's Gigolo Records, International DJ Gigolo, which was DJ Hell's label. Was like sort of like in between techno and Electroclash, and that was very important stuff for us at the time. It was very melodic and very, again, melancholic, and at the same time very powerful, and the kind of techno we'd be into as kids who didn't go to raves basically when they happened. I mean, some of us did, but I personally didn't, but I could relate to that easily. And so we got into club music. And we still had our like rap background and our IDM background, and basically me and my entourage were basically kids who got into electronic music through very intellectual stuff like Square Pusher and Aphex Twin, you name it, and Kid 606 and Otto von Schirach and that kind of stuff, and then discovered the more easy, danceable version of it. And at the same time, we were into complicated rap like Company Flow and Anti-Pop Consortium and Abstract Rude and Tribe Unique and that kind of stuff. And then we got into... And then we started being going back towards like club rap and Lil Jon and the crunk stuff that was happening at the time, and Ludacris and that kind of stuff, and so we wanted to merge the two together when we started. Not when we started making music, but around like the second TTC album.
Okay, can we back up a second here? When did you start TTC and who was in it?
We started TTC in 1999, and I was one of the rappers, and there was also Cuisinier, who is my cousin, and Tido Berman, and so these were the three rappers, and the producers were. At first, we were working with a whole bunch with many different producers. One of them was Flash Gordon, who later became Mr. Flash, who and later signed to Ed Banger, who's a notorious French digger. And then later on, it was Para One and Tacteel, and our DJ was DJ Orgasmic, who still does Sound Pellegrino with me. And that's it.
How did you meet DJ Orgasmic? Because he's been with you basically since the beginning of you putting out records.
I met him on the ski slopes. We were skiing together. And I had a Public Enemy t-shirt. And he was like, yo, you're into rap. And we were like 15, something like that, maybe 14. And I was like, yeah, I'm into rap. And he was like, I want to be a DJ. And I was like, I have one turntable. And I scratch a little bit. And so we exchanged a lot. And he ended up becoming more of the DJ. And I just like started getting into rap around that same time. So we've known each other for, more than 20 years, and we're still friends. But I'm still friends with the other members of TTC as well, even though the group is not active. We're still buddies. One of them is my cousin, so of course.
So you put out your first album in 2002.
Exactly.
On Big Data, which is a subsidiary of Ninja Tune Records.
It was a very abstract rap sounding album. And I don't like that album that much. I have trouble listening back to it now, and it sounds very adolescent, and it sounds like a rough copy of something that would become more interesting later on.
Does that mean that you don't want to hear this track with Dose One?
We can play it, yeah.
I just want to give people an idea of the evolution of TTC and Teki from then to now.
Yeah, this is stuff that makes me cringe a little bit now. It's a little bit pretentious and a little bit different for the sake of being different. But I guess there's still like qualities to it, and I think it's a good Para One beat. I haven't heard it in many moons, but it's probably kind of good. So let's listen to it.
Okay, this is TTC Pas d'Armure. Ooh, my French.
Pas d'Armure. Featuring by TTC, featuring Those One and I think other people.
High Tech.
Yeah, there's also La Caution on this track. I take from La Caution on this track. I'm the guy who can't listen to stuff he has done 5 years ago, or in this case, like more than 10 years ago. But I understand. It like some friends of mine said, it might sound whack, but it was dope at the time.
For sure. And I think that's kind of interesting that you and Dose are sort of doing chanson. Kind of traditional French sounding singing in the beginning.
Those One, who is someone I still really very much admire, who was one of the rappers from the Anticon collective, rappers, singers, pop guys, weird experimentalists from the Anticon collective. He was a big influence of mine at the time, and he was pushing, rap's boundaries, and he came to France, and he was like, "I want to do something with you guys." I mean, we wanted to do something with him, and he was like, "Okay, well, let's not just like have me do a verse. Let's just write something together. And can you translate this? I want to say this in French, and let's sing the chorus together in French, and let's make something that's coherent." And so he was very involved in the song. The song is produced by Para One, who had a long career after being a part of TTC.
I think that along with Mehdi, you're one of the people that is a definite, obvious link between the rap scene and the club scene in France. I see that you have something queued up from another person that people probably know from more house or electro house records, but it's a hip hop guy.
Yeah, it's Feeds. Feeds was when I met him, he was signed to B Pitch Control, which is Ellen Alien's label out of Berlin, who also were the home of the first Mode Selector albums, and they were super important, I think, for the Berlin electronic scene. And so Feeds was signed to that German label, and we started TTC. And he sort of introduced us to a whole world of techno that we had no idea existed. At first, Feeds was part of a group called ATK, which was a very popular and cool French rap group. They had like so many members. They had like 21 members or something. It was a big posse, ATK. And two of them were Feeds and Tacteel, who was a part of TTC. And so Feeds had one foot in the rap world and one foot in the electronic world, because he was making scratches on Mr. Oiseau's albums. And because Mr. Oiseau didn't want to tour, he said, okay, Feeds, you're going to tour instead of me. You're going to do the F Communication tour with Laurent Garnier and whoever. You're going to go in my place. And so Feeds started touring as a DJ in techno venues, because it was the F Communication, which is Laurent Garnier's label, which Mr. Oiseau was signed to, that were throwing the parties. So he sort of got in contact with that world and started going to Berlin and going to Hard Wax and digging in electronic music shops and finding out about all these labels, including B-Pitch Control. And then he sent a demo to Ellen Alien, and she released his first EP as a solo artist. And that EP included a track called Fizzle. And for me, it is really like this is like 2001 maybe, and like this is a real fusion of electronic music and hip hop before dubstep existed, and before a lot of UK music that really sounds like this existed, and like half time sort of electronic weirdness. Like this is like a blueprint for that kind of music, and it's and not a lot of people know it, and a lot of people know Feeds from what he has done after, which is produce for Uffy and be a member of the Ed Banger roster. But before that, Feeds was making that kind of weird hybrid music that some of us later called Eurocrunk. Fizzle by Feeds.
So who else was with you in this nascent Eurocrunk posse?
Well, basically, it was the early, like, well, the second album, like right in between the two first TTC albums. So 2003. So that's the kind of stuff that Feeds was releasing. Orgasmic was also making beats for the Cuisinier mixtapes that came out a little bit later on, sampling songs like I Like to Move It and turning them into like crunk songs.
Holy pepperoni, motherfuckers, it's time to watch.
So there was that, and Paro One was also making solo stuff that it was before he was making 4/4 stuff, and he was just experimenting with rap and instrumental weird club music. That was, we were coming out of our IDM phase, and we're like, okay, let's make this is music people are gonna dance to, but we had no idea how to make dance music. So it still sounded really weird and really like bizarre, and we didn't know how to make like pure dance music or house music or electro music. It was clubby in our head, but it really sounded weird. Like this is a track by Para One called Nobody Cares, from his first EP on Institubes, which is the second release on Institubes. So yeah, there was a bunch of French people making that, and mostly from our entourage, and we felt like Diplo and the early holotronic stuff that was going on in the States was a sort of had affiliation with that, and we felt like Mode Selector were like the German version of that, and there was a lot of people all over Europe, the Cerebralistics guys and the Radioclit guys in Scandinavia and the UK were sort of like-minded, and we all loved the first grime records, and we saw grime as Ludacris and Gabber put together, and for us it was really exciting. Like, it's okay to listen to like Lil Jon now, and it's okay to like mixing with electronic influences, to mix it with electronic influences, and it's okay to dance to it, even though we didn't have a clue what dance music really was, and it was just an exciting time where everyone was experimenting and not really knowing what they were doing, and Feeds was playing an Ellen Alien song mixed with a Noriega song, and it totally made sense. And Orgasmic was also like playing like Missy songs into Doppler effect, and it totally made sense. And we loved it, and we thought this could have maybe given birth to a movement. And for a second, one of the Radio Clit guys, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Radio Clit. They were one of them was from Sweden, and he's called Johan, and he now has the group The Very Best. And the other one was Etienne, DJ Tron, who was French, and they were based in the UK. So it was a very multicultural group, and they had the idea to market this whole scene as Eurocrunk, and they had a connection in a hip hop magazine, in a UK hip hop magazine called, I think, Hip Hop Connection, if I'm not mistaken. And they had a big article called Eurocrunk is coming, with all the artists showcased. But it was more of a joke, like the name is silly, and like the name really never really caught on. And basically what happened is that around the same time, Justice were putting out their first records, and Vitalik was really big, and too many DJs were starting to be interested in the whole like French scene, and they were playing like the Justice record, We Are Your Friends, all over the place, and this became like super popular, and all these French producers started saying to themselves, well, maybe if we do like 4/4 music and we make it sound like bangers, we're going to be more popular, and we're going to get some bookings outside of France. And so that scene sort of cannibalized all the experimenting that was going on, and a lot of people just like started doing like 4/4 stuff. And I think some of them like still kept the spirits, and people like Surkin and Bob Mo and these guys sort of like retained some of the spirit from from those early 2000 days when we didn't know what we were doing, but still, like no one was doing halftime stuff anymore because it was considered electronic rap, which was becoming a little bit of a dirty word and a nerdy thing that wasn't cool anymore. So we sort of abandoned this, and scenes like the beat scene sort of took over and occupied that space. And I feel like a lot of stuff coming out of Montreal too sort of took that space. And it was really a pity because we were in the center of it, and we sort of abandoned it in order to make like big bangers. And I'm always a little bit sad when I think of this.
I want to show video number 1, which is TTC Telephone, just to give people an idea of what you guys looked like when you came out and what you were doing. And it's kind of...
This is not when we came out, though.
Well,
this is like 2006.
In the middle,
yeah.
mid-career.
Well, and last album. Telephone was from our third and last album.
So tell me about the making of this video that we're going to watch.
It's just like... there's nothing really to say. It's made by a friend of ours who goes by the name of Out One, and is it actually? I'm not even sure. Out One made it. Anyway,
you guys got video number 1 back there? Anyone? Bueller? Oh, here we go.
No.
Yeah, just basically like this, very Baltimore influenced. The beat is produced by Orgasmic, the guy with long hair in the video, who has since cut his hair. Yeah, it was just a fun track, very gimmicky. We were thinking like, how can we control the world, and how can we become the biggest thing in the world? Oh, we should make a song about phones because everyone has a ringtone now and it's a thing. So we were gonna make a song about that, and maybe everyone's gonna use it as a ringtone, and it happened a little bit, and we were just like trying to go pop and trying to do it in a fun way, and trying to like to make a fun song and wear like bright colors and just be cool.
I mean, I think you achieved that.
Sort of, yeah, a little bit.
Well, I wanted to play this too, even though it might not be your favorite, because you guys became really big in France. And now when you walk down the street, mad people are stopping you.
Yeah, this was super big in Montreal, this song. They had like people, a lot of people were stopping us on the street because of this song. And doing the dance that I do at the end of the video, which we won't show, which is basically just...
We're all going to learn it later.
So a lot of people liked it. But... I don't think it's the best TTC song, but it's a good one. It's a good little pop number, and it has the disposable quality of a good pop song.
So while you were in the middle of doing TTC and releasing records, you also started a label called Institubes.
Yeah.
And you actually started that to put out a rap record, right?
Yeah. It was like a rap supergroup of like indie rap, French indie rap kids called L'Atelier. And we had nowhere to put it out, so we decided to make our own label. But then soon after, we wanted it to be a more like dance-oriented label, but then again, it was still like our version of dance music, which was a little bit warped and weird. And so the first Para One EP came out on Institubes, and the first Tacteel stuff too. A lot of that stuff sounds like... can I play a Tacteel song?
Sure.
Here's a Tacteel song that sounds like a Kanye beat from 2015, except it came out in 2004. So yeah, this is what we were putting out basically at the beginning of Institubes.
And who all was involved in that label with you?
It was me and a bunch of really fun intellectuals. Jean-René Etienne, who's a big mastermind and very important figure for me. Like, he really made us discover a whole world of music, and he was him and Jean-René Etienne, him and Etienne Menu. So Jean-René Etienne and Etienne Menu, they were. Etienne Menu was also journalist, is also a journalist, who has impeccable taste and a real vision in music, and there was many other people involved, and but yeah, the originators were Tacteel, me, Jean-René, Etienne, and a guy called Olivier, who then left. But yeah, it was just a crew of people who were. A lot of them were very like they had done like really like big studies in political science, and they were applying the same kind of nerdism that they applied to their studies to music. So they were they were listening to Otecker and Boards of Canada and all that kind of stuff, and like making the rap kids in my entourage listen to that kind of stuff very early on, and they were very defining for our musical tastes.
One of the things that was so notable for me seeing Institubes in the States, which was like a huge electro house label alongside Ed Banger. You guys were like the biggest thing for us, and the branding and all the branding and all the ideas around not just that you guys were a super group, but also the label looked impeccable, and the logos and the sleeves, and you had scarves, and everything was so like perfectly done. You basically made a whole world that you could tap into.
Yeah, thank you. That was important for us to have coherence in what we did and to tie the visual aspect with the music as well. But I think every label is like that. We didn't invent that kind of stuff. You know, obviously like Mo Wax and people like that paved the way. Ninja Tune Warp paved the way for that kind of aesthetic and tying the design with the music.
And during that time, you were also hanging out a lot at a club called Paris.
Yeah, just wrote an article about it for RBMA. Yeah, it was an important club for us. It was small club in Paris where we used to hang out, and it was a very hedonistic place where anything could happen and some very dirty things happened. And we were just, living the life. TTC was very popular at the time. Institubes kind of had its place, and at Banger were, of course, like blowing up. And so we were flossing, and the place to floss was the Paris.
Do you have video number 6 that we could show, please? So if we can show this video, this is a video of an iPod battle that you and Romain Rock were creating. And the reason that I picked this is just to show, it shows DJ Mehdi in the video, and also Somi, who's the graphic designer for Ed Banger. And I don't know who else is in it.
Probably
Emile,
the Justice guys, Emile from Sound Pellegrino, Tacteel, a bunch of journalists, hip people from the mid 2000s. We were doing these iPod battle things that started as a rock vs rap thing, and then it was just anything goes, and we play. It was kind of like our dandy French version of a sound clash. Each one plays a song, each team plays a song, and at the end of the day, we measure the applause, and whoever gets the more applause wins.
Okay, we can roll it.
Yeah, a lot of fist pumping and just like, us being bros. And that was again, it might sound whack, but it was dope at the time.
For sure. I want to move on from that, but first I was hoping we could drop a couple tracks from Institubes just to get like the flavor of what you were putting out. Yeah, I'm going to select them. So this is just a sample of a couple things. First one is Surkin, Ghetto Obsession, 2006.
So when I talked about transitioning from like clever, intelligent dance music, IDM, towards more club stuff, one thing that was very important for us was ghetto tech and DJ Assault and DJ Dion and Juke and Ghetto House and DJ Funk and that whole scene between Detroit and Chicago. That was very important for us, and I think you can still hear that element in Surkin and Bob Mo's music. So the sort of second generation Institubes guys, even the first generation, we had that thing, and like I said, some of the guys in Institubes who didn't make music but who were taking decisions and being artistic directors for the label. One of them, Etienne Menu, said something one day that sort of became a motto for us and some words to live by. We were talking about this song by The Roots with Erykah Badu that had a jungle, a drum and bass sort of breakdown at some point in the song. And we were like, no, like this is not, we can't imagine the future of hip hop through elements from the past of electronic music, and we were, because a lot of rap kids were finding out about drum and bass 10 years after, and they were putting drum and bass in their raps and being like, oh, we're being futuristic right now, we're making that stuff that English people made 10 years ago, a little bit kind of like what's happening with grime nowadays in US rap, and so we were like, well, we can't imagine the future of rap with the past of electronic music. And at the same time, ghetto tech was happening, and we were like, oh, this is this is the right fusion of hip hop and electronic music. DJ Assault and what Disco D was putting out at the time. Like, we were really influenced by that. I think you can still hear it in those songs.
So you're flossing in the club. It's like, 2008 or whatever. Institubes is going strong. You've been on tour all over the world with TTC. And then it was a big shock to me, at least, or like everyone I knew, that Institubes was no more.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a little bit later on. That was 2010.
Can you talk about Sound Pellegrino forming and Institubes ending?
There was also a time around 2008, I had made a pop album produced by and composed by Gonzalez, the pianist. I had like a big hit on the French radio called Les Matins de Paris. We can play that. It's still a great song. It's still a perfect pop song, and it was on the radio, and I achieved what I wanted to do with it, and basically I still love it, and this happened in 2008, and so I was very busy with this stuff. And also very busy touring with TTC. So I was a little bit less involved in Institubes at the time. And Institubes had been taken over by other members of the crew. And they were doing a great job with it, but they took it in a different sort of direction. And after a while, Orgasmic, it was mainly Orgasmic. And I was, of course, because he is one of my best friends, I sort of... followed his lead into playing a little bit more house music influenced stuff and a little bit more like club music influenced stuff. And basically what everybody was doing at that time as far as like club music goes in Paris was big distorted bangers. Big like brr, 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 big bro stuff that, and like it had like a metal aesthetic almost. Everyone was wearing leather jackets and being like rock and being like like rock this, like very broy, and no one danced anymore, and the clubs were just like a bunch of kids wearing loud colors or like heavy metal jackets going like this. And fist pumping, and it felt like concerts more than dance floors. And so we wanted to go back to the DJ and the dancing element of it, and we were influenced by other stuff, different stuff from what was popular at the time in Paris, and Institubes had gone a different way, and Institubes was releasing stuff by Midnight Juggernauts, Chateau Marmont, which was more like 70s pop oriented. We had Crystal. Unfortunately, Ryota from Crystal was going to be in the second term of the academy, but he didn't come. Like we had like some really strong, more like home listening stuff going on Institubes, and I wanted to bring it back to the clubs, and me and Orgasmic wanted to have an output where we could just like release the club music that we loved and pump out like club hits every month, and not have to worry about waiting and oh no, this guy needs to put out an album, so we have to wait for our turn. And so we needed to create something different from Institubes, so we created Sound Pellegrino, which was started as an offshoot of Institubes and was digital only, so we didn't have to wait all this time for vinyls to be made. Like we could just pump out records every month, so it was very liberating for us to have Sound Pellegrino. And that was in 2009 when it started.
And you also have a DJ team with Orgasmic.
Yeah, it was. That's when I started DJing, actually. Because after the pop stuff, when the pop stuff happened, I wanted it to be larger than life. And the single was big, but the album was never big. And so we didn't have, and soon after I got dropped from EMI, so we didn't have like the budgets to go on tour with a full band, and give life to this pop music that I had in mind in a live form, in a concert form. So, but I was still being asked to perform. So I started doing DJ sets, and I wasn't a DJ, so it was terrible at first. But then I started thinking, you know what? I want to do this seriously because I love DJ culture, and I've been hanging out with people like Feeds and Orgasmic and DJ Fab and all of these guys all my life, and I want to take this seriously out of respect for all of these people who have paved the way. And I was fascinated by the fact of taking two tracks and putting them together and creating a third track with them. I was just genuinely fascinated by that. So I decided to take DJing seriously, and we started performing together with Orgasmic as some sort of window for the label under the name Sound Pellegrino Thermal Team, and we made tracks as well.
Did you bring some tracks from Sound Pellegrino that you wanted to play?
I don't think I have them on this key.
I got a few. So what you mentioned, what sort of the driving quote of Institubes was. Do you have a similar thing for Sound Pellegrino? Like a banner?
It's not a punchline, but it was basically going back to more minimalist tracks, and going back to dance music as a form of music where, well, basically a form of music you can dance to, and you can and the fact that influenced by labels like Dance Mania and but even dance labels like Dirty Bird that were just putting out a lot of records all the time, and it doesn't matter if some of them are a little bit disposable, as long as you can keep putting them out and giving an identity to the label, and feeding the DJs with music. Basically, we wanted to feed the DJs with music with Sound Pellegrino.
Yeah, you have some releases that are kind of just club tools.
Yeah,
only.
exactly. Yeah, and it's not a problem, and it's not. We totally we love that, and it's part of our aesthetic.
And even though you have people from all over the world releasing on Sound Pellegrino, there is quite a few French artists, Parisian artists as well.
Yeah, totally.
Can you name some of them?
Well, right now there's Coyote, who's a French DJ he's actually one of the people who made Ghetto Tech and Juke a big thing in France at some point. And he was silent for a while, and then he released 3 EPs on Mixpack, and we were always supporting it, and now he's releasing on Sound Pellegrino. There's a new kid called Dolin, who makes sort of weird trancey bass music, very elegant and very pure, and not at all EDM sounding, but rather more ambient sounding actually, but still with a beat and still with some drums, and it's hard to describe, but he's making a very unique sound, and we love him very much. And there was Duster, who's actually from Lyon, who released the second Sound Pellegrino record, and who's still around, and who has a track with Feats on our next compilation, even though he's not on the roster officially. He's still making stuff with us, and there's a lot of people, and also people from the UK. We did records with Elvis 1990 early on in his career. We had Tom Trago and Bug together on a release. We had Surkin and Todd Edwards together on a release. We had people like Teeth from Finland, Iro Maniello from South Africa, Harvard Bass from the States. Who else? a lot of different people from different places in the world.
Well, rather than playing that, I actually want to play a bit of this mixtape that you did called Deconstructed Trance, because I think one of the things that you're doing at the moment is really looking for new frontiers in club music, whether that be through Sound Pellegrino, especially your compilations, or mixtapes and DJ sets that you're doing.
Yeah, like I said, I'm fascinated by the sort of construction element of DJing and of dance music, and the fact that it's like a Lego, like you take different elements and put them together to create something new, and that's a very important thing for me, and that's how I channel my creation now. Now that I don't make my own music anymore, and now that I don't make vocals anymore, because I stopped that a little while ago, and I sort of ran out of ideas in that area a little while ago, and now I'm just channeling it through DJing 100%. And I don't want to just be a selector. I really want to create something original with my mixes and do something a little bit. It's a dirty word, but a little bit conceptual, and at least. Yeah, channel my creation through things like that. And so I made a mix. It's actually called Deconstructed, Trance, Reconstructed. I came across the music of Lorenzo Senni, who makes, he's an Italian producer who makes drumless trance. I saw him live at the Macba during Sonar in Barcelona and blew my mind. It's just him playing these beautiful arpeggios without drums, and there's a big laser, there's a laser like being coordinated with the music, and it's really, really beautiful, and it really like impressed me a lot, and so yeah, I love his music, and inspired by what he made, I sort of started sticking beats on top of his music. From other genres, from techno to grime to just like club music in general, and I started because I was always fascinated by the idea of drum tools, and when you play a lot of drum tools, it gets a little bit boring, and there's when there's no melody whatsoever in your DJ sets, you kind of look for things to make your music a little bit more lighthearted and a little bit more colorful. And so these trance beats without drums were kind of were a way for me to include more melody in my sets, while keeping that sort of construction game aspect of it. And so I started looking for trance build-ups from like original trance songs and looping them. And I made that mix with 3 CDJs. It's all made live, and I'm really proud of it. So there's like, part of it is drumless tracks, like ambient tracks, tracks by, there's a track by, I think, Pearson Sound, and that's just like a drumless melody track. There's a bunch of tracks from like grime guys like Slack and stuff like that. And I made a connection between that, the trance thing, classic trance tracks, and also like, you can buy trance tools on certain digital platforms. It's like separate tracks from. It's like CDs with, like they used to have like CDs with just the drums and then just the trance leads and stuff like that. So I started like digging in that kind of stuff and picked up my favorite stuff from that and put that all together over techno beats and grime beats. And the result is this.
So that was Teki Latex.
Thank you.
Deconstructed, Trance, Reconstructed. So right now, moving into the future, you're actually in search of new forms of club music, or specifically French club.
Well, I tried to bring together some young French producers who are influenced by bass music and the kind of stuff that I like, and try to find out with them why there's been no typical French club music in a while. The last time we tried to have our own French identity in club music was the French touch stuff, and it's the French touch thing is a kind of a middle class thing, and there was never like it was kind of a bourgeois thing. It was a thing that's made by people from Versailles who it was basically very pop also, and except for some nervous, like a little bit more nervous exceptions that we heard a little bit earlier on. It was a very clean and radio friendly thing, but there hasn't been like pure club music from the hood or from like young people who like underground people. There hasn't been stuff like that in a while, whereas in the UK there's the whole genealogy of sound system music that evolved into drum and bass and grime and dubstep and all that stuff, and these are very specific and local English styles that influence the whole world, but like people from France are gonna look for these artists and book them in France because they want to hear that sound. Same thing for the Kuduro stuff with Angola and Portugal. Same thing for the Baltimore stuff, the Jersey stuff, the South African stuff. All these places have, out of the struggle and the local way of consuming music, were born all these styles that are very specific. And why don't we have that in France? Why is French club music nowadays sort of very influenced by stuff that comes from all over the place, but it doesn't really have an identity? It's always someone trying to make grime, or someone trying to make techno, or someone trying to make this or that, but there's very little specific Frenchness to these styles. I mean, there's exceptions, of course, and in the techno world, it's a little bit more complicated because techno really doesn't have a specific a sound connected to a country. But there's no equivalent to Kuduro in Paris. There's no equivalent to grime in Paris. There's no equivalent to Kwaito or Gum in Paris. And I put together a team of French kids to try and find out why, and maybe explore what could be done to change that, and if it needs to exist, or if it's just something that exists by itself and that comes together because of non-music related reasons, or there's a lot of questions to be asked, and I think it's important to think about those things, and because right now techno is omnipresent in France, and there's a lot of techno is everywhere in Paris. There's a lot of big festivals and big parties and stuff like that, but it's a very I find that the French club identity is there's a lot of Paris trying to be Berlin, and I think it's a shame that we don't have our own thing. And as far as producers go, it's always like that, trying to emulate sounds coming from other cities rather than creating our own. So I'm trying to think of a way to do that, and it's an ongoing reflection.
Amazing. Well, Teki, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're gonna take questions right now. If anyone has any questions. Yes. While we wait for the mic, can I have mic?
Hi.
Hi.
So you said you're looking at like how a city develops its own sound, right? So like, has there been any epiphanies that you've had so far in your thought processes towards that, in your conversations with other artists?
Not really. I mean, aside from the obvious, the fact that people make music to forget about the reality and to try to escape the problems they have in their ongoing lives, and aside from that, aside from what we all know and we haven't had the real answer, except that maybe France is, like I said, very the culture in France goes through channels that are more literary than body centered. Like there's not a dancing is looked down upon. Like dance culture is always attached to cheesy electro house or David Guetta and stuff like that, and people don't take you seriously when you tell them that you're a DJ or that you going to clubs is always like, that's not a real cultural activity. It's not. You have to go to museums and you have to read books. Like every rapper in order for a rapper to really blow up in France, it goes through emulating poets or being compared to poets. Like even the most hardcore French rapper, when he'll have an article in a mainstream magazine, he'll be compared to Céline, or he'll be compared to a French, writer. And even though he has never read that guy, even though he's just making his own thing, which is rap, he's always going to be compared to that sort of literal heritage, literary, heritage. So yeah, there was, I think what happened is that we never had pirate stations in France. We had like underground radios, but we never had like a real pirate station culture like they had in the UK. We dance culture was always looked down upon, and it's changing now with the new generations, and with the internet. But there was always like, dance, underground music. We didn't need to have our own genres of underground music because rap was so big. Mainly because of that radio thing where you had to have lyrics in French. So for something to blow up, it had to have lyrics in French. And people from the projects and people from the hood didn't feel the need to create their own style of dance music because they had rap and they could be really successful with it. They could make real money out of it. So why invent something else, I think that's one of the reasons. But there's no epiphany of how we're going to create our own thing yet.
So for the dance music side, I'm guessing that you French people, from what you said, would be more accepting of more sophisticated forms of dance music.
Of course, there's a real romantic and intellectual way of making dance music in France, and it's a good thing too.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Anyone else?
Hey, so it was interesting watching you talk about like other people's music and like get really into it and, like vibing on it. And then when you were playing your own music, you seemed to be quite self-critical. And do you find that that's an obstacle when you're creating? Because I know that lots of people have that problem, like getting too precious almost.
Yeah, it's an obstacle to the point where I stopped doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm critical in general, and because I'm passionate about music, and I played a lot of music I really love from the bottom of my heart, but there's a lot of music I hate with the same passion, and part of it is my own music, but yeah, that's how it is when you when you become an old person like me, and you've lived through a lot of different phases and a lot of different trends in music, you start to become very critical of it in general. And like I always say, some of it sounds bad now, but sounded great at the time, and it has its own importance in a way, and that's how you evolve, and yeah, but in my mind, I'm still, when I do a mixtape like this, the one that we just heard, the Deconstructed, Trance, Reconstructed one, I still feel like in a way that's kind of production in a way, even though I'm just playing with other people's music, there's a real sense of trying to make something new with it. So I do it and I love it, and I think there's so much stuff out there that pleases me. When I started making rap, it was also out of not being happy with the French rap that was out at the time, and so trying to create my own version of it, because there was nothing that I could relate to. I mean, so little things that I could relate to in French rap. And now I guess that there's enough dance music for me to be happy, so I'm just going to play it instead of making it.
Cool, thank you.
And I think it's also important to differentiate the work of a DJ and the work of a producer. And I think that there can be great DJs who don't produce music, and it's not because you're a producer that you have to feel the need to force yourself to become a DJ and do it badly. I'd rather listen to a good DJ who doesn't make his own music play other people's music in a great way. It's two different jobs, and some people have trouble making that difference. And also there's a lot of pressure on producers to perform in front of a live audience, and sometimes it's not easy to make an electronic live show and to sell a lot of tickets by doing that. So a lot of producers are tempted to just go and DJ, and they don't do it seriously, and they just do it to make an easy buck and be able to keep creating music in the studio. I think these are two different things, And also a lot of DJs think that they're not going to have bookings if they don't produce, so they hire a ghost producer, and they just make shitty music and stuff like that, where they're just really good DJs and they should stick to making that, but in the mind of people, these two things come together, whereas I think they should really be separated.
About this moment that you were really interested in pop music, and where does that come from? Is that part of your wish to forward or advance French music, and what was your motivation? Because it seems very contradictory at the same time.
Yeah, I know, but it makes sense to me. For me, when I played those songs early on in the lecture that are super big pop songs, this is what I got into music. This is what I listened to before I made music, so it's part of my DNA, and I wanted to recreate that. And these are still forward-thinking songs. And I had the illusion, because also that was 2008, so you have to put yourself back in the context of, there was no Pussycat Dolls and no EDM and no, it was the pop music that was coming out at the time was still kind of forward thinking. It was Outkast, it was Justin Timberlake produced by Timbaland, it was Gwen Stefani, who was also making sort of 80s influenced music, but it was still the Neptunes behind it, and Timbaland behind it, so it was still sort of cool and new and futuristic, and there was a real excitement behind it. There was the Knife as well, and all the European, the Scandinavian pop people who, again, EDM didn't exist yet, so it was still a little bit experimental and not big and loud and I mean, not cheesy. I don't know. It was cheesy, but there's a difference between 80s pop cheesy and EDM cheesy. And I think that difference is the emo aspect of it, where 80s pop is pure and based on pure feelings and romantic feelings, and EDM cheesiness is based on, look at me, I have emotions, look at me, I'm, emo, and that kind of stuff makes the difference. And I don't like emo stuff. And so, yeah, I was influenced by that when I made this album, and I wanted to live that fantasy, and I wanted to be like a big, fat, bald Gwen Stefani. Punchline.
Do you think it's still possible? Sorry, one more question. But do you think it's still possible to, or do you think the world is like? Do you think that phase is over? Like, do you think?
It's hard to say. It's hard to say. I want to believe it's still possible, but I don't think I have it in me to make it possible anymore.
Thanks for doing this, first of all.
Thank you.
It's really interesting. How do you see the current French rap that's maybe more popular right now with the younger audience, like maybe the more street-oriented stuff like Caris or Gradure or these people? How do you see them fit into the narrative of what you were just talking about? Is there any sort of connection? Because from the outside perspective, it really feels like this lives in a silo and it doesn't really cross over with any of the things that you and your friends would do.
Well, they do what they do is great, and some of it really has a French identity to it. I think, like for example, like stuff like PNL, I think really has a French identity to it, but it reflects a state of mind that I can't get into, because I don't know, I sort of gave up on it for some reason. I don't know. It sounds like the stuff like Gradure and the contemporary French stuff is just a reflection of the US French stuff, which has become slower and more wavy and a little bit more emo as well, and I can't really connect with it anymore. And I think that it's a reflection of our times, and the last wave of rap I was really into was the mid 2000 stuff, the crunk stuff and the diplomat stuff, and people had like big outfits and it was larger than life and everything looked like a Hollywood movie and it was over the top, and Cameron was wearing pink and he didn't give a shit and he was just like being very extravagant, and there was a lot of positivity to be taken from that, and a lot of bragging, and that's what I loved about it. I loved the cartoonish aspect of it without being silly and without being goofy. They were really serious about their stuff, and it was talking about like real subject and real like hood stuff, but it was done. He was referencing the Goonies and he didn't give a shit, like it was just fun stuff, and he was very like all of these guys were like really flamboyant and stuff like that. Whereas and since then there was the recession, and now like people have a little bit more of a sad approach to rap, and I can't really relate to that. It doesn't mean that I'm not aware of the world we live in and the financial situation that we live in, but I don't want to hear that in entertainment. I want to escape from it. So I want to hear like boasting, colorful stuff when I listen to music. I want to escape from my everyday life. So I don't want rappers to talk about stuff that makes me depressed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey there, Teki.
Hey.
Thanks for doing that.
Thanks.
I was just thinking about what you said regarding, incorporating grime or drum and bass into rap music or club music at another time, and then feeling futuristic about it. And with regards to what you said about your quest of creating a new type of French identity in club music and finding it, is that possible to create something like that without traces of the past, do you think?
It has to be subconscious, it has to be basically something that comes out naturally, instead of sticking a drum and bass beat on top of a rap song in 2001, you know, or rapping over techno beat or whatever, you know. It has to be something that's in our DNA because we grew up listening to it, and it comes out naturally in the music we make. But it's a hard thing, you know. This is why it's an ongoing process, you know. I haven't found the right way to do it yet. But we're trying to also analyze what makes, what's the specificity of French music, and what do we love about the French touch or the French pop or African-influenced French stuff that came out in our childhood, and trying to take the best elements from that and make something new out of it. But it's all about like making something new out of it, and not just like rapping over drum and bass.
Thanks.
Anyone else? All right. Well, then I guess we'll go eat dinner. Teki, thank you so much for being here.
Dinner already?
I think it's time for dinner.
Thank you so much.